From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We believe that this delay will kill the pipeline, and if it doesn't, if this pipeline re-emerges after the election, people have signed pledges saying they will put their bodies on the line to stop it.
Environmental activists are claiming victory after the Obama administration announced it'll put off any decision on the Keystone XL tar sands oil pipeline until 2013. We'll get reaction from Canadian writer Naomi Klein. Then another major fight is brewing between environmentalists and the White House, this time over fracking.
For the past 3.5 years, thousands upon thousands of citizens and scores of organizations have fought to keep gas drilling out of the Delaware River Basin. And for the past 3.5 years, the region has been in moratorium. On November 21st, all that could change.
We'll speak with award-winning film director Josh Fox, whose film Gasland ignited a nationwide movement against fracking. Then to the Occupy movements across the country. In Minneapolis, activists helped to stop a foreclosure.
It's not only me, it's other people that this is happening to. So I'm asking you guys, if possible, to help me to occupy my house to keep them from taking it from me.
We'll be joined by Monique White, who now still has her home, as well as Max Rameau, head of the Take Back the Land movement. Then, as developments continue to unfold with the shocking child rape scandal at Penn State that's led to the ouster of the winningest head coach in major college football history and the arrest of his assistant coach, we'll speak with sports writer Dave Zirin. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Activists are claiming victory after the Obama administration announced it would put off any decision on approving the Keystone XL tar sands oil pipeline until 2013, well after the 2012 elections. On Thursday, the White House said it needed more time to review the route of the 1,700-mile, $7 billion Trans-Canada pipeline and its environmental impact on Nebraska's Sandhills region. The announcement was made just days after over 10,000 people encircled the White House, calling on President Obama to reject the project. Opponents had objected to the pipeline over its potential dangers to the areas along its path and its tapping of the carbon-intensive Canadian tar sands. We'll have more after headlines. A U.S. Army sergeant has been convicted of leading a so-called kill team in Afghanistan that murdered civilians, then kept their body parts for sport. Staff Sergeant Calvin Gibbs has admitted to cutting the fingers off dead Afghan civilians as war trophies. Other soldiers have said it was his idea to kill civilians and stage their deaths to make them appear to have been combatants. Despite being found guilty on all 15 counts, including premeditated murder, Gibbs avoided an automatic life sentence and will be eligible for parole after 8.5 years behind bars. At least 9 people have reportedly been killed in Syria today in President Bashar al-Assad's ongoing crackdown on opposition protests. The new killings come amidst reports of dozens of deaths over the past 2 days, most in the Flashpoint area of Homs. In a new report, Human Rights Watch has accused the Assad government of crimes against humanity for alleged killings of protesters dating back to April, citing what it calls, quote, the systematic nature of abuses against civilians, including torture and unlawful killings. Human Rights Watch says the UN should impose an arms embargo on Syria and refer top officials to the International Criminal Court for prosecution. Student activists at the University of California, Berkeley are calling for a probe of campus police after a violent confrontation at an Occupy-related protest earlier this week. Video footage shows police in riot gear hitting students with batons as they linked arms outside the campus administration building. The protest was a part of a number of actions held on at least 10 California campuses. We'll have more later in the broadcast. Meanwhile, in Portland, Oregon, activists are facing a weekend deadline to vacate protest encampments at 2 city parks they've held for the past 6 weeks. Portland Mayor Sam Adams says protesters will need to clear out their tents by 12:01 a.m. Sunday morning. In Vermont, a 35-year-old man has died after apparently shooting himself in the head at an Occupy encampment in downtown Burlington. The unidentified victim was pronounced dead at the hospital shortly after shooting himself Thursday afternoon. Burlington police say they've now banned camping at the site. Occupy Wall Street protesters staged an action Thursday at a speech by Republican presidential hopeful Michelle Bachmann in South Carolina. Bachmann was speaking aboard a World War II aircraft carrier when around 30 people rose from the audience to drown her out. Bachmann has been a vocal Republican critic of the Occupy movement. She returned to finish her speech after the protesters were removed. In other Occupy news, New York activists have erected a women-only tent following reports of sexual assault at the Lower Manhattan encampment.
Felt that they were kind of like, I mean, their rights were being violated to the extent that they were in the camp, and they had people that were actually, I mean, like invading their tent space and stuff like that. So they instituted the women's only tent, which is just for the women. We have security around the clock now, actually, I mean, patrolling the camp itself.
It's housing 20 people right now, but it can house more once we organize, and that's what I have the glove on. I was about to clean up. But my plan is to get more tents for the women, and I'm trying to get maybe an 80 by 80 or 60 by 80, 60 by 60 tent to put the other side for women's safety.
Greece is swearing in a new prime minister today to head an interim government amidst ongoing economic turmoil. Lucas Papadimos, a former European Central Bank vice president, will serve a 3-month term before new elections in February. On Thursday, thousands of people rallied outside the Greek parliament calling for immediate elections. Papadimos replaces outgoing Prime Minister George Papandreou, who resigned shortly after canceling his plan for a national referendum on an austerity measure demanded by Eurozone countries in return for a bailout. James Murdoch, the son of media mogul Rupert Murdoch, returned before a British parliamentary inquiry Thursday to deny misleading lawmakers over the phone hacking scandal that's consumed his father's company, News Corporation. James Murdoch repeatedly denied he'd been given evidence of widespread phone hacking at a crucial meeting in 2008 and placed the blame on former executives who themselves have testified they had made him aware.
As I said to you, as I wrote to you and I issued a public statement, certainly in the evidence that they gave to you in 2011, with respect to my knowledge, I thought it was inconsistent and not right, and I dispute it vigorously.
So you think Mr. Crone misled us?
That it follows that I did, yes.
And so do you think Mr. Myler misled us as well?
I believe their testimony was misleading, and I dispute it.
4 elderly members of a Georgia militia have been arrested on charges of keeping hit lists targeting government officials. Prosecutors say Attorney General Eric Holder and former Congress member and Green Party presidential candidate Cynthia McKinney were listed as potential assassination targets. The group's alleged ringleader, Frederick Thomas, was found to have stockpiled 52 guns and 30,000 rounds of ammunition in his Georgia home. A major U.S. climate study group has announced it will begin accepting money from big oil companies and other large corporations after losing most of its funding. The Center for Climate and Energy Solutions was formerly known as the Pew Center on Global Climate Change until the Pew Charitable Trust withdrew its financing for 80% of the group's $4.4 million budget. The new center will be funded by companies including Shell, General Electric, Duke Energy, Bank of America, and others. President Obama is heading to his birthplace of Hawaii today for the gathering of Asia-Pacific leaders at the APEC summit. Activists with the group Occupy Honolulu are planning a march on the summit to protest neoliberal trade deals under APEC, as well as what they call draconian security measures around this weekend's gathering. At a speech ahead of the summit, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton called for greater U.S.-Pacific ties.
The 21st century will be America's Pacific century, a period of unprecedented outreach and partnership in this dynamic, complex, and consequential region. American businesses are eager for more opportunities to trade and invest in Asian markets, and we share with most nations the goal of broad-based, sustainable growth that expands opportunity, protects workers and the environment, respects intellectual property, and fosters innovation. But to accomplish these goals, we have to create a rules-based order, one that is open, free, transparent, and fair.
And a Virginia District Court judge has ruled the U.S. government can collect the private information of 3 WikiLeaks volunteers from the social networking site Twitter. The government has subpoenaed all the account information of Icelandic lawmaker Birgitta Jonsdottir, Dutch activist Rob Gondrup, and programmer Jacob Appelbaum. Thursday's ruling upholds a lower court judgment in March that found the subpoena does not violate constitutional protections against unreasonable searches. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.